Hello, welcome back to Forever Grateful. Today I want to share with you about my dark days. Now you might be wondering, do I have dark days? Well, I do, and yes, they do happen. And right from the beginning I had the odd dark day, and I had this very bad habit of, on those days, I would Google my condition, I would Google my survival rate, I would Google the treatments and the statistics. And then what would happen is I would go further and further down and find it very, very difficult to pull myself out of that dark state. And I would lie in my bed and think if I could just close my eyes and go back to a time when this disease didn't live in my body. Or I would look at photographs of myself. And even now, as I'm 5 months from my stem cell transplant, I look at photographs of my family and I in happier times. And I think to myself, wow, wouldn't it be wonderful to be like that again, to be carefree? And sadly, when we get ourselves into a dark place, or for me certainly, I find that positive thoughts don't enter there. The anxiety and worry about the future takes us to a negative spiral. And at some point you've got to stop yourself and remind yourself, as I did, that I'm not a statistic. And although statistics have a place, I am not going to be a statistic. And so I had to then get myself out of this dark place by remembering that it will happen. And it's like a tunnel that you go through. You will come to the other side. But in the meantime, what can you do, or what did I do to get myself out of this? Well, first of all, I stopped Googling. I realized that it doesn't help me to have all this information. It doesn't help me to hear all these numbers about what could happen. Then I would do things to take my mind off this disease. I wouldn't focus on it. I didn't want it to define me. So I would go for a walk. I would do something with my hands. In actual fact, I'm not a knitter, but I took up knitting. I knitted 5 scarves during my treatment. I knitted myself a stem cell blanket, as I called it. Subsequent to that, I've learned to do patchwork, and I have found to keep my mind so busy has been incredibly helpful to focus on something that is not an illness or a disease. I had to dig deep and ask myself, what is the true basis for my faith? What is going to get me through, and what is going to hold me firm when I go through the dark days? And I have an overwhelming belief that God is sovereign, that God is in control, that God knows exactly what's going on in my body. In actual fact, He knows even more than my doctors do. Now, this also is where I was very moved by an article that I read, which made me realize that although I have uncertainty about my future, so does everybody. Nobody knows what's going to happen to them. Nobody knows if they're going to be 50, 70 or 100. And in the same way that one day I will die, so will everybody. And nobody really knows how. I just have this little clicking time bomb which reminds me that I'm not immortal and that I'm not invincible. And once I moved past this, it helped as well. I also had to realize that I would go through dark times, that I will go through times, and this is a part of a journey which is going to be like this for many, many years to come. And if I can learn to ride out the dark days, I can go outside and enjoy the sunshine. I also find nature, walking and doing something physical, a very helpful reminder of God's sovereignty. When I look at the mountains and when I look at everything that is in nature, the flowers, I love the seashore, I love watching the waves break. I love anything that takes my mind off of this disease and allows me to focus on something else and not be defined by this. I also have to remind myself that God is still there. And in the same way that a mountain doesn't move, neither does God. I move. And I perhaps allow myself to be caught up in reading about my disease or my ailment, or I read life stories and inevitably they're about somebody on a terrible journey, and then I find myself overcome by emotion. But I need to remind myself, this is not me. That story is not about me. My story is still being written and my life is still being played out. And if I believe God is sovereign and in control of this, then He knows what the future holds. And it doesn't matter how many times I Google, I'm going to come up with the same answer, and it's not going to give me the answer I want to hear. Because the answer that I want to hear is that you'll be able to close your eyes, and when you wake up tomorrow, you won't wake up with this disease. And that is not an answer which they can give me yet. So, in the meanwhile, what am I going to do? I'm going to focus on other things and not allow myself to be defined by this thing. And I'm going to keep my trust on a sovereign God who will bring me through this journey no matter what. And I'm also going to believe that he has a plan of this, and that this was his plan for my life all along. And it's for my best good ultimately. And I have to trust that. And that is what true faith is. Bye for now.